Hey, it's Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of One Man's Journey podcast. Today, I am blessed to have Zach Gerard with me, an old friend. Been around a while, kind of touched base here and there throughout like the last decade, really. I think we've kind of touched base. But Zach is a husband, a father of two, and a network marketing genius. He calls himself professional. I'll say genius. Really, really good dude, and I'm super excited to have him on and roll through his story. So, Zach, I'll pass it on over and let's hear what you got.
Yeah, no, this is great. It's funny you mentioned like we've been in touch over the past, 10 plus years, and you stop and think about it and you're just like, wow, it kind of makes me feel old. I still feel young, but it's like,
you look young
in your
too.
30s looking back and it's like, wow, I've actually have somewhat the start of a career already here, right? I feel like a kid still.
Yeah, it's fun to look back like that for sure.
Yeah. So no, I appreciate you having me on, man. And I think it'll be a really good time getting a chance to talk a little bit about what we do and, how it can relate to, success in any arena. And that's the biggest thing. And I know that we had talked a little bit about this offline, just recognizing that, having success in whatever it is that I do, the success principles are the same across the board, recognizing that bettering yourself and, and becoming your true self is actually what produces success. And it doesn't matter if it's in network marketing like me or real estate in the mortgage industry like you. It's success is the same across the board. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about kind of your journey through the network marketing. I mean, obviously 10 years ago, it's probably a different landscape than it is now. How did you get involved with it? How does it feel like, tell us a little bit about kind of your journey there.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember it like it was yesterday. So rewind. I'm 35 now. I'm pretty sure. Lose track. I'm pretty sure I'm 35. But I think I was at like 19. I was 19 when I got approached about the network marketing industry. A lot of people know what it is. Some people don't. People would compare. Other people call it like direct sales, right? So I work with a big company, but I'm an independent rep. And that's kind of how it works. I remember 19 years old, I was driving home on a Sunday evening. So I live in the Twin Cities area. And my dad actually lives about an hour and a half north of the cities. And I used to visit him on the weekends. Like that was kind of the schedule that we'd have is I drive up there on weekends, visit him. And, I've got little siblings up there and what have you. And like I said, this was back when I was 19 years old. I remember a Sunday evening driving back home to the Twin Cities, and I get a phone call from a number that I don't recognize. And, back then it still wasn't illegal to, have your phone while you were talking. Now you can't do that. But I remember getting this phone call and a gal's on the other line. And she said, hey, you don't know me, but, I had grabbed your number from a friend of yours. His name is Pat. And he said that it might be a good idea to give you a call and just kind of see what you had going on for work. And it's funny because, like, truth be told, it honestly didn't matter what she said. I was single at the time. A girl called me and asked if I wanted to get coffee. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. And it's funny how it played out because she ended up actually, we didn't get coffee. She ended up referring me into a meeting that was already scheduled to meet with Jake, who's a guy who's actually one of my business advisors still today. And it was just an interesting scenario, So this guy, Jake, comes over to my cousin's apartment and there's a handful of us in the living room and we're just talking business. I'm a 19-year-old. I have absolutely no experience with business. I mean, I graduated high school. I hadn't yet enrolled in college, although my parents wanted me to. I had no idea what I wanted to do for a living. And at that point in my life, all I cared about was having fun and partying, to be completely honest. And so I'm in this room with this guy, Jake, and, he starts talking about the idea of having a business of your own. And never once in my life was it ever something up to that point that I had ever even considered. Everybody in my sphere of influence at that time it was just the typical go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a degree, and, you'll be okay. And so I wasn't even doing good at that process yet, right? I wasn't enrolled in college. I was working, 2 part-time jobs at the time. But yeah, this guy's talking to us about potentially owning a business of my own and what that might potentially look like. And it was interesting because it was super shallow stuff that really got me intrigued. He was like, what do you think about the idea of being your own boss? And I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. I had never considered it. How about setting the alarm clock for whatever time you want to get up, and not what when your boss tells you you have to be at work. And I'm like, sign me up. That sounds great. And so it was funny because looking back on it now, it's like I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I'm glad I had that little ounce of trust in this complete stranger, Jake, because looking back, it's like it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. And not because, in my opinion, not because network marketing is special as opposed to other industries, but really what it was, and this is kind of what we had mentioned offline, is like it put me in an arena where I could learn from people that understood what true success was. They took seriously the concept of self-development. And there was nobody in my life at that point that was on that path. People that were reading books intentionally to become better people, to master their craft. And that's not to say that people in my life were bad. I mean, I love my family. I love my parents. They're awesome. But it's like you can't teach somebody something you haven't done yourself, right? And so for me, it wasn't this situation where I looked at all my options and I said, you know what, network marketing is going to be my thing. It was call it providence, call it whatever you want. It was a situation where the opportunity presented itself and it seemed like a good idea. And looking back on it, I'm super excited. It's what I chose to pursue because it's got me in some really, really beneficial doors for me personally and for my family as a whole.
Yeah, I think, looking back at my time, because I think we would have probably talked only a year or two after that, I would believe would have been about the time frame when we first met. And for me, I remember in my search for that, it was just trying to be in an arena, like you said, you framed it as an arena with people that were bettering themselves. And I think there's a subconscious need to be in those situations for a lot of us. Yeah. And we just don't know where to go.
Right.
And so when someone opened that door, your intuition, you trusted yourself. You said you trusted Jake. Really, you trusted yourself, right?
Right.
You trusted yourself to be able to jump into that and recognize, like, this is a room I just want to be in right now. And it doesn't have to be forever, but you made the decision to be in the room in that short time frame.
Right.
And like you've continually chose to be in that room, right? Because success, like you said, success carries across wherever we go.
Dude, I love that.
It's just you continually choose it, and that's a great place to be. And that's really what it takes in anywhere to succeed. What like on a daily basis, or how are you continually choosing that to I'm going to say live life by design, because arguably that's what you've done over the last 10 years is kind of designed the life you want to live. How do you continually choose to do that on a daily basis? Like when you get up, like what fires you up when you wake up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's an interesting question that for me has evolved, especially over the past handful of years. So coming out of, like 2020, COVID, that whole thing, Ashley and I had our first kid. So we've got one now. He's 2 years old. And he, like having kids changes everything, in my opinion. And it's interesting because like before you have kids, you hear people talk about like their journey in having kids and what it does. And people tell you like, you'll never sleep another, you're going to spend the next 10 years not getting good sleep. And they're not lying, but I wouldn't change it for anything. And if I can be completely honest with you, like, so, me getting introduced to network marketing, what became my profession at 19 and not having kids until I was in my 30s, like I had a pretty decent window of time to kind of get my bearings about me, at least from a professional standpoint, right? Like a career standpoint. And I have so much respect for people that have kids early. Like in retrospect, I probably would have done it a little bit earlier, but the reason why I bring this up is because, to be completely honest, I mean, in that span between me starting my own business and then having kids, like, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I was like hair on fire, type A, get the job done, be the best person you can be, like every day. That just wasn't my story. I know some people that are really good at being consistent and they're very mission minded. For me, I'm more of an adventure to live type of guy. Like I love having fun. And so if it's like, for me, if I can find an arena where I can have fun, like sometimes I put my goals aside so that I can enjoy life. And sometimes to a detriment, right? And so like for me, looking back on my career in the business before having kids, I had a lot of fun. Did I accomplish everything I wanted to? Absolutely not. I mean, if you're, if you're, you know, if you have a winning spirit, like you're never as far as you want to be, right? We always want to accomplish more. But we come out of COVID, I have my first kid, and things changed because I started to recognize that I now wasn't just living my life for myself, right? Like I had to decide who I wanted to be for my son, for Jack. And it's like I recognize, and this is going all the way back to, me talking about this story of me recognizing, or maybe not even really recognizing, but making the decision to put myself in an arena where other people were choosing to be better. Because it was those people that even before I had kids said, when you have kids, you're going to have to teach them who you want them to, like the type of person you want them to become. And you don't teach them that by telling them that, you teach them that by showing them that, right? And I've also, one of my business advisors, Matt, I've heard him, if I've heard him say it once, I've heard him say it a million times, is everything that you choose not to learn or to master yourself, you forfeit the right to teach to your children. And I look back on my experience. I told you that, like, I love my family, I love my parents, but they were not the ones to teach me how to achieve financial independence because they had not done it yet, right? And so it's like I have a kid, and I kind of have this self-realization over these first couple of years of having a kid, because when he's a little infant, there's just not much to it. But now he's in that stage where he's starting to develop his own personality, and you just watch his mind start to grow and learn new things every day. And then they start to copy you, they mirror you, and you're like, okay, now I actually have to pay attention to what I'm doing. And it's like, well, it's better for me to create the habits that I want to instill in him now than have to try to play catch up when he's in, 10, 11, 12 into his teenage years. And so for me today, to answer your question, like what keeps me on my goals and moving forward is recognizing that the person I'm continuing to become today is going to be the example for my son. And that changes everything.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And, we've got our first one on the way as well. So that's great advice for me directly. So I appreciate that. Yeah. And so kind of funny, our lives kind of tracked in a similar way, because I'm 35 as well now, having our first one too. So that's really interesting. And you mentioned the piece about your dad not necessarily instilling the financial piece of it, and it doesn't necessarily even have to go as far as financial independence for everybody else, right? Like we see this same concept layered across, and you said something that Matt said. I want you to repeat what he said so I get it 100% correctly about not being able to teach. Yeah, I want to hear you say
anything that you don't master or learn yourself, you forfeit the right to teach your children.
For a lot of people, right, that could be anger. It could be really anything that your parents struggled with, that you saw them struggle with. And we end up flipping it, and we try to go exactly in the opposite direction. Yeah. And I've read No More Mr. Nice Guy. I don't know if you've read it at all. It's a great book that, the title may throw you off a little bit, but good one to put down. And it really just talks about that, how like so many guys in the world today are so focused on not being their father that they never really develop their own personality. They never really become who they could be, because they're so focused on not being that guy. And so dad was mean, so I'm going to be super nice. And then they get taken advantage of, and then they get into relationships that take advantage of them. And so like getting into, like you keep saying the arena, and I love that statement. You got into an arena that allowed you to develop without having to fight that way on your own. It got you to a place where, with the financial independence, that's what you wanted, but you didn't have a teacher, and you somehow, you searched out that teacher and you found it. And I would assume in your business, knowing you and knowing your personality, that's kind of how you teach the people that you bring into the business as well, right? It's teaching them the things that you've learned. How do you do that on a regular basis? Is it something just kind of taking bits and pieces from different people, or is it something that you've developed, a little bit on your own? How does that come into play?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, If I took a second to think about it, it's interesting because I've created a habit of consuming content in, in the category of self-development, whether that's listening to podcasts or, reading books, things like that. But it's interesting because when I sit down with people, I don't often think about the success principles per se that I'm trying to instill. Like, it's interesting to say that. It's like, of course, I want them to learn success principles because I want them to be successful. I mean, especially in our industry. I mean, as in any industry, now that I think about it, it's like the people that you're coaching and mentoring, the more successful you can help them become, the better your outcome is going to be by default. I remember John Maxwell saying something like that. It was like, hold
Was
on,
it
I
John
have it.
Maxwell or Jim Rohn? Because I think it was Jim Rohn, and I think he said the more people you help become successful, the more successful you become yourself. Or if you help enough people get to where they want to go, you'll get to where you want to go.
Yeah. So I keep a notes section in my phone, like whether I'm listening or reading or stuff like that. Like some people highlight in books. I don't often. I'm kind of like I don't know. I just don't. I like my book looking new, and I like it to stay that way. So it's like if my highlight is, I usually put it in my notes section in my app. But I just came across this the other day, and I know what you're saying, and it's absolutely holds true. This was a John Maxwell quote. This is what it was. He said, "I believe the bottom line in leadership isn't how far we advance ourselves, but how far we advance others." Right. And so to go back to your question, right? Like, okay, so with the people that I'm working with, when I sit down with them, I usually am not focused so much on this principle and this, success tip, although we talk about those things. For me in my industry, what I've found works best is sitting down with somebody and figuring out what actually matters to them, right? And not just in business or in their career, but in life, right? Like, the way that our business is set up is I do a lot of interviews, right? If that's what you want to call them. I'll sit down with people and I'll talk to them about what their career goals are, income goals are, and then just talk about what they're trying to accomplish in life, and then figure out whether or not I believe the business or the opportunity that we have will get them what it is that they're trying to accomplish, right? Like for me, that's what an interview is. It's matching. Okay, let's talk about what your goals are, and let's talk about the opportunity that we have here at hand, and figure out whether or not those things, like if I can help you actually get what it is that you want, right? And some of the most important things that I've learned from having hundreds and hundreds of these conversations with people is there's so many people out there in life that don't necessarily even know who it is they want to become yet, right? And so to answer your question, the thing that I've found is the best way, the way to bring out the best in somebody is to help show them who they can be, a lot of times even before they realize it, right? And so it's really, and sometimes it's a lot. You really got to dig to help them find out what they want out of life. Because just like me, when I was 19 years old and I got approached by Jake, my business advisor, after having that strange woman call me and me being like, "Yeah, let's have coffee." It's like these people are just kind of floating down the river of life. They're doing what everybody else is telling them to do, and they've never really sat down and thought, like, okay, what do I want my life to look like, right? And you had alluded to that before. Like, you have to, if you're gonna live the life you want, you have to be intentional about designing it, right? And so for me, when I'm sitting down with people that I'm working with, it's exactly what you just said. I've had the best success helping people accomplish their goals by just simply helping show them who it is that they could become if they actually put in the work. So
We're referring to other people's journeys. I love that, being able to, like, like you said, it's an individualized approach of being able to help them recognize who they want to be. Looking back through your time, because I think I can look back and go, I remember the time where that switch kind of flipped a little bit. But like looking back through your time, where did you recognize you were coming from, like at 19, you just really didn't know what it was about. You're just like, yep, I'm just going to dive in and trust this dude and trust myself and just jump in.
Yeah.
At what point did that switch kind of flip and go, okay, I'm in a position to really like recognize that I can design my life the way I want it to?
Right. Right. That's a good question. And I don't know if it was like a moment as much as it has been an ongoing evolution over time, right? Because I recognize now the person that I am today is so vastly different than the person that I was at 19, right? Now, that's not to say that I don't like some of the values that I held at that point. Going back to what I said, like I think I had great parents and they instilled good values in me. And I still hold those values today, but so much of me has evolved over time that it was like, so as that pertains to my career in network marketing, I get started in this business because I like the idea of being able to not have an alarm clock and to make a lot of money, as shallow as that sounds. And to be honest, it could have been any industry. It was just that it happened to be this industry where somebody came in and said, I will mentor you. Right? If a real estate agent came in and said, hey, you should do real estate, I will mentor you, I would probably be a real estate agent right now. You know what I mean? But it worked out this way. But in the beginning of my journey of owning my business, to be honest, it wasn't really like technically did I own my own business? Yeah. I mean, I was self-employed. I was filling out a 1099 and not a W-2 and then, progress from there. But it's like, I wasn't really in the beginning for probably years. I wasn't running my own business. I was a part of somebody else's endeavor. And that's okay because he was teaching me what it was like to run your own business, right? And so I go from being a part of somebody else's thing to over time recognizing and a lot of times it's the point at which I was most frustrated with where I was at in my business that I came to the realization that something had to change, right? And that's when I would take up more responsibility. And I don't think it like you had mentioned, like you had kind of framed the question. I don't think it's just a switch. It's like, honestly, it's a series of switches over time and it's like the opposite of what you would think, right? It was like, it's usually not like amazing achievements that caused me to then take more responsibility and go to the next level. Oftentimes it was me being fed up with not getting the results that I wanted and being like, okay, something's got to change, right? But what's so cool is, to your point, I'm in an arena where I have other people where when I'm not satisfied with the results I'm getting, I have people that I can go have dialogue with, I can mastermind with, and I can lay this out and say, okay, here's what I want, and here's what I've yet to accomplish. I need your help, right? And whether it's any industry, so somebody watching this, it's like, if you don't currently have at least one person that you would put in the category of a coach or a mentor in your career and in your life, like that's the missing ingredient, in my opinion, right? Because for me, that's what it was. I would get fed up. I would say something's got to change because I'm not progressing the way that I'd like to. And I'd have sounding boards, people that I could bounce ideas off of. And most of the time it's like, you just have to assume more responsibility. That's leadership 101. And it's when I make those decisions that my life and my business actually progress.
Yeah. And that's when I said that I could think of the time, right? It was actually like, is a similar situation where it ended up getting, I get an action plan put in front of me by a boss and they go, I came back from a vacation. So I'm like riding high and then I got this piece of paper on my desk,
Yeah.
And like, that was the moment. Like I can literally look back and go, okay, that's when the moment. Cause I just like, okay, I'm not calling the leads that you're supplying anymore. I'll go find my own. And I like that was the moment. Really, it probably happened, a couple months before that when I was able to figure out that I could create leads and go source my own business. But, I remember that specifically, that was like the first moment. Right. And then, as we continue to go on, we hit these different failure markers and, like we're trying to accomplish something, we don't get there. Mm-hmm. And then you choose to go, okay, well, I'm going to do this again. And you make that choice. And then like, that's where you get to recognize like, that's my business because I chose to continue forward. And, especially in real estate with the ups and downs that we've had over 5 years, even Like people in been in the industry for 5 years have experienced literally the best time and now the worst time in 30 years in the mortgage industry within a span of 3 years. And if they're continuing to choose to move forward, that's the ownership part. You mentioned something about the leadership aspect. Like if you couldn't find somebody that you would call a mentor. And it brought a thought to me. And it's a theme that I've recognized throughout a bunch of these episodes that we've shot and a bunch of the other podcasts that I do as well, which is the real estate based podcast Reconnect. Mm-hmm. And it comes from a lot of like helping people who are where you were get to where you are.
Yeah.
And so I would even challenge when you say that, you know, go find a mentor, which can be difficult for people because they have to look up, right? Like they think that they have to look up to this level of like, I got to reach up and ask them. And that's a fearful thing. Mm-hmm. I would say that to make that piece easier, turn around and see who's trying to come together with you.
Yeah.
And reach out a hand, and then you become the person that gets looked up to. You become the person that creates that environment. And then by becoming that person, you already move yourself up the level, and then you get to look across, right?
Yeah.
And you know, like looking back to our relationship, I would feel like it was a similar situation where you're bringing me in, and I remember a couple of the other people that we would sit around and have fun with, and you know, that's how it felt at that point, right? Like you were the experienced guy and I was the guy just coming in, and you probably felt like I don't have any experience. I'm just helping this guy do, you know, and it evolves. And now you're the guy that people are coming to and the expert and the, you know, the guy that can help that way. So, yeah, I mean, just helping people get to where you are is such a huge thing.
Yeah. Understanding perspective it's crazy because so often we don't even think about the perspective of the other person, right? Most people, and especially if they haven't done any sort of self-development, they're so focused on their own impression that they don't even think about what the other person is thinking. And that's exactly what you just verbalized, right? It's like, you know, we're in an environment and I don't necessarily think that I'm the guy, but you being this brand new person in that environment, you know what I mean? So it's a really good observation. Absolutely. A really good observation.
It's a really cool feeling to look back and have that feeling as well. And now knowing like in my industry, I would be looked at that way, right? Like I'm in a management position at the company I'm with, and that's what it feels like. People are coming to me with questions, and it's like, I mean, I just do this on a daily basis. Like this is just what I do. You know, you get to that point of like recognizing it's just what you do. Yeah. So we've talked a couple of times about like what success looks like across platforms, and you mentioned a story beforehand before we got recording, and I was like, damn, we should have saved that one. But you talked about a time when you just had dinner with somebody in a different field, and tell me a little. I want you to tell that story because of how powerful it was when you did that.
I can totally. And I'm trying to remember what even brought that to mind. You had mentioned something that sparked the thought, right? And I had let you know that, you know, so Ashley and I with, you know, our network marketing business, we have a client of ours. She's an awesome gal. And it was funny enough, we were introduced to this gal by my dad. It's like, I'll take a lead from anywhere. You know what I mean? Now, when we were introduced, it wasn't like, hey, here's going to be a potential client. It was like, we were just, you know, in an environment, we were introduced, and, you know, she had asked about what we did, and long and short of it, she, you know, now she uses a lot of the brands that we have to offer in our business. And last week we had grabbed dinner with her, right? So we had some product that we were getting to her, and we decided, well, let's just grab dinner. And so we did. And I didn't realize it until after the fact that this was the first time that my wife and I, because we operate this business together, right? It's a team sport for us. And so my wife and I went and grabbed dinner with this gal. And it was the first time we were in an environment where we weren't in a crowd. It was just us. And so we're talking, and we get to talking about stuff because of that environment. We get to talking about stuff that we hadn't ever really discussed before. And, you know, it started by talking about her career, and she does really well. She works in IT, cybersecurity, and she's told me a little bit about some of the projects that she works on, and they're not small projects, right? So I'm fairly certain she gets compensated well. And anyways, we're just eating dinner, talking about this. And, you know, it started by talking about how her work was going, and then it kind of rolled into our business. And before dinner was done, she was basically rolling out a success seminar on how to empower people to become better. And seriously, at the end of the dinner, I said, Linda, like, can I have you come in as a keynote speaker to have a discussion with our team? Because that was incredible. And it just goes to show that success is the same in any arena. And if I had to like put what she talked about, if I had to, boil it down into like one sentence or one phrase, it was really her just illuminating to me and reminding me. It wasn't something I had never heard before, but to be honest with you, it had been a little while and it was so good. This goes back to what I was mentioning, right? So like she went with her team and her environment, what she has learned how to get really good at doing is putting a 10 on somebody's forehead, right? Like making not necessarily, hey, here's what you need to do better, but saying, hey, here's how I see you. I see you as being incredible at this because I know you have exactly what it takes, right? And almost talking to them as though they're already that person, even if they're not performing the way that you'd like them to. Speak to them as if. And people often, not all the time, but in most scenarios, they will rise to that occasion, right? And she was telling me this. I'm like, this is, sometimes I just get, because our industry is a little bit different, being self-employed, the entrepreneur space with what we do, where sometimes we look negatively at corporate, because I see people all the time getting so taken advantage of in the corporate arena that I've shut my brain off to that. And that was just a reminder, like success is success in any industry. And it was so good what she said, just talking about empowering people to be better instead of telling them all the things that they're doing wrong. Show them who they can be. And in most scenarios, people will rise to that occasion. It was so good. And I was just dropping off an order and having dinner with this gal.
Yeah.
So it was really
cool.
And
I think a lot of times too, in those environments where, people are feeling like they're inferior, it's because they feel that they're being judged on something that they don't really fit, right? I think you mentioned as well a story of somebody being on stage and being able to kind of do a talk in front of thousands of people about success. But if you put that same person on the stage and ask them to dance, like people are going to laugh at them because it's just not going to work, right? And my dad used to tell a story, and really not a story, but we'd watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and like you're looking at these people, and the people that go far in the competition, they end up being like, you're like, oh, these people are super smart. And my dad would always say, well, what's smart? Like if you put all sports questions up there, I might do really well and be able to win $1 million. And so,
right.
The old adage of if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to forever feel like a failure.
Right.
And so, if that, I think being able to take what she did there and, build them up by showing them what they could be.
Yeah.
Or I see you this way. While that person may see themselves as a fish trying to climb a tree, you see them as a squirrel climbing a tree, and they're really good at it, right? And being able to take that frame and just build people up, and it just continues to come back to it for me. It's just the relationship aspect and the connection piece, and just being able to connect with people, and not, in your industry, it can probably become really easy to just look at people in a numbers way, right? Like I've got to just throw out these numbers. I got to call 100 people today. I got to do this, and it's just the same way in ours, right? Like we have people that utilizing CRMs to send out 500 text messages to real estate agents at the same time, trying to connect with one. And if they would just take a little bit of time, go search out 25 real estate agents and actually go to their social profiles and understand who these people are as people,
right?
That connection becomes way more strong. And now they have more success and can probably get 2 or 3 out of 25 instead of 1 out of 500 because they decided to send that mass message. So
100%.
And I know that you do it that way for sure.
Right. The principles apply across industries. Absolutely. Right. Because I think to your point, the value in getting to where you want to go, like, is keeping it between the lines, right? Like with the analogy, don't jump from one end of the ditch to the other. Right. So I remember like a few years ago, I chose to pick up a book based upon a recommendation from a coach, a book called Fanatical Prospecting. And this was a time in our industry, or at least, in my business, where the pipeline was just, it was dry. we weren't putting enough people through the pipeline. And you can listen to that and say, well, it sounds like a numbers game. Well, yeah, that is a factor. It matters, right? And so I read this book called Fanatical Prospecting, learning how to forever keep your pipeline full. And I think that there has to be a point, at least in our industry, there has to be a point where somebody masters that. Like, you have to get good at knowing when your pipeline's drying up, because you never want it to get completely dry. Like, it'll start to diminish, and we got to make sure that we keep stuff going. But to your point, if you never learn to once you get that pipeline going, if you never learn to slow down and actually understand who it is that you're talking to, you're going to sound disingenuous, and people see right through that, right? And that's when your ratio of, I'm going to have this many conversations to net this many sales or whatever it might be. It's like, okay, so now we need to learn how to connect, right? So the pipeline's important, because if we're not sitting down with anybody, we're not having any success. But once we've figured out that pipeline, now we have to master the art of connecting. Because truthfully, it's like, if you're just funneling through prospects, and every once in a while you're getting a bite, you're landing a catch, it's like, okay, it's better than not creating any sales. But how many sales could you have had, right? How many prospects are you turning over that now maybe even have a bad impression of who you are and what you do? Whereas if we can just slow down, there's a really good book. I wouldn't be surprised if you've come across it already, by John Maxwell, called Everybody Communicates, Few Connect. So good. And it talks exactly about this topic, is recognizing, like, when you're sitting down with somebody, and this is what I had mentioned, for me, it's like, I'm not necessarily trying to teach people success principles. I'm just showing them that I'm genuinely interested in what's important to them. And I bet it's no different in the real estate industry, right? Like, you tell me what it is that you want, and I'm going to work my tail off to make sure we find it, right?
Yeah, and that's the difficult part that we see as well, is because there's so many, and I obviously have the perspective of loan officer going to speak with real estate agents. There's such a bad perception out there because so many people just make cold calls in the same script and the same language and the same tone and the same everything to everybody. And so it becomes like, oh, here's another one. And so I've started recognizing that instead of just introducing myself, I'm going to introduce my story.
Yeah.
And so, like, I've obviously developed that a little bit through being able to do the podcast and stuff like that. But being able to connect with people and learning how that connection happens allows you to recognize, like, stories are important, and being able to connect on that story. I actually heard in that No More Mr. Nice Guy book this week as well, he talked about being a Teflon man. And like, we go through life and we just want to smooth all the edges out. It's like a Teflon pan where the egg just doesn't stick to the pan and it just flips around. But it's the same way. Like, if you have no edges to yourself, people are just going to slide right off of you and never connect with you. And so being able to recognize those stories are the edges, right? Like, being able to build the stories that you can capture people's attention that you wouldn't even recognize you'd capture, because they're just going to like associate with what you bring to the table. And so being able to utilize that is such a strength. And like, Zach, you very, very much have that strength. And I've seen it throughout the episode here. And I think there's a lot of connection points there. So if you could leave us with one thing, what would you leave us with, Zach?
It's worth it. You're worth it. I think a lot of times, especially if people are just getting into an environment where people are telling them or encouraging them to put the work into actually progress in whatever career they're in. And it might be something to the effect where maybe you're not in the career you're in. But the truth is, if you want to be successful in a career, even if that's not the career you're in, the best thing that you can do is start being good at what you're doing now, right? And even my coaches today, that, like, we'll sit down with people that are, they're full-time doing this. They decide that they want to start their own network marketing business. And it's like, now's not the time for you to not put effort into your job. Don't take effort from your job and put it here. Be the best person you can be today at your job, even if that's not where you want to be. Because when you leave there, you want them to say, man, I really missed them. You know what I mean? Like, you leave, everywhere you go, you leave an impression. right? So if there's anything I can leave with somebody, it's, you know, put your best effort in today because it's worth it and you're worth it. And when you leave that, whether that industry or that person, or if it's just a meeting, you want them to think that you want them to feel better about themselves leaving that meeting. And the way that you do that is by being the best and most genuine self that you could possibly be.
I love it.
As cheesy as it might sound.
No, man, that's the money is in the cliches, right? Like if we break it down, like the cliches are the cliches because they ring through for so long, right? So
right.
the more we actually explore what those mean, the better off we're going to be. So Zach, I truly appreciate your time today. I'm excited to continue to collaborate with you in the future. I think we've got some value we can bring to both of our audiences. So I appreciate you being here and looking forward to seeing what you are able to pull off in the future.